Are you concerned about all this corruption being rebranded as conspiracy theory? Well, don't you worry. Sit back and relax and join in the conversation with today's guest. Welcome to another LSB Film Productions podcast with your host, Chris Brooks.
Hello and welcome to the channel. It's me, Chris Brooks, for another LSB Film podcast. I hope everyone's keeping well. Today's guest is Jo Wolo. We have her back on because Jo, since we last spoke, has published her book. It's not a film. And it has been doing quite well. We've got some good reviews on Amazon and I've had a read of it. It's over there in the corner and Jo has her own copy to hand, I'm fairly sure. And so we're going to go through it and we're going to just talk about the book and the journey that she's taken to get to this point. So welcome to the show.
Nice to be here, Chris, again.
Nice to have you here. So let's talk about your book.
Right, let me plug it a bit first. There we go. This is what it looks like. Because people are very visual, so they won't necessarily remember the title, but they will remember what it looks like. So yeah, protect what's yours. I put this book together because, as you know, I've been going around giving talks about private irrevocable trusts. I was on Richard Bove's show and I was on your show a couple of months ago too. And all this information I had in my files, sitting there collecting dust, I thought, well, I might as well put it in the book because I get asked the same questions over and over and over again. So if I put it all in a book, you know, it will save people a lot of time, because there's no such thing as a stupid question. If you don't know the answer, you don't know the answer. And my book will take you through all the legal jargon, which, you know, there's been a lot of people on podcasts talking about private trusts, but they use all the legal jargon. And people don't understand it. And why should you? You know, we're not brought up to understand this language. So I started my book, you know, basically describing what certain words mean, like settlers, you know, trustees, beneficiaries, what sort of, what is a trust? Why would you need a trust? You know, what benefits are there to having one? And what sort of trust would be suitable for you? So I go through all that in the book, and there's loads of frequently asked questions. So it's one of those books that you can just dip in and out if there's something that, you know, you've got a question. You think, oh, just look in Jo's book, and the answer will hopefully be in there.
Well,
some of it,
sorry, I was just going to say, you know, what it lacks in storyline, it makes up for in leaps and bounds in quality information. Because you know, I don't know much about trusts and that, but the way it's written, it does make it so much easier to digest in layman's terms, shall we say. You know, I'm not trying
and you know, we're not taught about this for a reason. They you know, the powers that be doesn't want us to know, because they're going to lose an awful lot of revenue once everybody wakes up to this. And as I said before, you know, most people think you have to be a multimillionaire to have a trust. You don't. I mean, the average UK house price is around close to 300,000. Everyone's allowance is 325. Yes, you can increase that allowance if you leave it to your children, or your husband or wife dies and they haven't used any of their allowance. It will increase that. But if you're single, if you're not leaving anything to your children, then you get the flat 325. And most houses are worth over that now. That's without any investments or savings anyone may have. You know, life insurance, anything like that will soon take you over that limit, and you're looking at 40% tax on anything over that. So, you know, most people are not aware they will fall into that bracket until they you know, they listen to me, or, you know, they buy the book and they'll go, oh, hang on, let me add up everything I've got. And you'd be surprised, because they take everything into account. And it's not just, as I say, it's not just for inheritance tax. You know, it's protects you against divorce proceedings. You know, I've done my trust, and, you know, I've got 3 sons, and I've got a divorce clause in there. if you unfortunately have to get a divorce, then it stops your spouse, taking anything that's been left to you
That'd be
in a
like a
trust.
prenuptial.
It is, but they don't have to sign anything.
Okay.
It's just you, the trustees, have to sign this trust to say what you want happening, what you want to happen to your assets. It's for people who are being chased by debt collectors. People threatening to put charges on your property. They can't do that if your house is in trust. Probate, it's brilliant for probate. It completely cancels out probate. You don't have to go down that road. You don't have to fill in all those questions, all those very personal questions. It bypasses probate, so the process is a lot quicker. And in my book, I've actually got several scenarios for people to check, because people don't know what to do if somebody dies. They know, you register the death so you're able to bury that person or cremate that person, but they don't understand the process after that. And it's different whether you've made a will or a trust. Wills are public, by the way. Once you snuff it, that will is public, and anybody can see what you had and who you left it to. Trusts are private, and nobody knows what you've had and what you've left. And if somebody dies with their assets in a trust, the process is so much simpler, so much less hassle. If somebody dies if they've got a will and they dies, then you have to go through probate, and that can take a few months, if not more. If you die without making a will, you have to apply for letters of administration, and that can take over a year. Now, if your house is mortgaged and you die and you haven't made a will or a trust, then you have to wait for probate to be granted before you can sell that property. Within that time, 6 months, a year, whatever, the lender will be adding fees onto that mortgage balance. So, if it's a year, you're looking at a big sum being taken away from your beneficiaries through fees alone. If you've got a trust, you send the bank a copy of the trust, the death certificate, and then you can put it up for sale straight away, which saves your beneficiaries.
So could you put could you put a pension in a trust? When you set up a pension, can you say, I want the money from this pension to go into this?
No, private pensions are not usually applicable for inheritance tax.
Okay.
They're applicable for other taxes, but not usually inheritance tax. And if you've got a private pension, all you need to do is call up the pension provider and tell them you want to make a letter of wishes, which is it's just like a will, really. When you're no longer here, you want your pension to go to whoever. So that safeguards it anyway. But private pensions don't usually become part of your estate as such.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, it depends. It depends on how much you've got, what you've spent, and what you haven't spent. But I'm not a tax advisor, so I can't give any advice on that. But yeah, I mean, there's ways to protect in your pension. Life cover, it's not unusual for people to have 200 grand worth of life cover to cover their mortgage and cover their, family lifestyle if they're no longer here. Now, if that's not written in trust, that becomes part of your estate too. And if your house is worth 300 grand, you've got 200 grand life cover, you're already at £500,000, and that's without anything else that you may own.
That is incredible.
And life cover is simple to put in trust. If you haven't got life cover, it does pay out. People are very, very cautious when it comes to buying life cover, but life cover does pay out. I mean, I was selling it for years, and I know it pays out. The only way it doesn't pay out is if you lie on the application form, the health questionnaire. And the biggest lie that people tell on the health questionnaire is the smoking status. Do you smoke? Most people say no, and if they say yes, their premium is doubled. So a lot of people say no when they do actually smoke, and also people lie about their height and they lie about their weight. If that's a couple of inches or a few pounds, it doesn't matter.
What difference does the height make? Weight I could understand, but the height?
Because it's the height to weight ratio.
So like the body mass index.
Yes, which is rubbish, because I've had bodybuilders get turned down
For
because
obesity.
yeah, because they're over the BMI, but they're all muscle. So it's not very fair when it comes to people like that. But yeah, if you take out life cover, whoever's doing it for you, I'd go to an advisor to do it for you because nobody reads the small print when they do it online.
See,
So,
they wouldn't cover me when we took out the mortgage on this place in 2020. They wouldn't cover me because I'd had testicular cancer back in 2008 or 9, 2009. You'd think I'd remember that, wouldn't you? I think it was about
how long ago before the mortgage was that then?
11 years.
Oh, okay, that's yeah, well, that's unusual. I mean,
Well,
usually if
no, no, or they would, but it would have been quite a high.
yeah, they'd rate it. Yeah, they'd
Mm.
rate it.
And so we went, no, you're right.
See, life cover providers and critical illness providers, it's like car insurance. You have to shop around for it. So, if you go with an advisor, they will usually have, well, some will have whole of market, for these providers. So, people have got they've had different medical issues, I know, over the years, and some lenders will won't they won't insure you for it, and other providers will insure you for it.
Mm.
You're best to talk to an advisor because they're the experts and they know what providers will cover certain ailments. Breast cancer, bowel cancer. A lot of as long as you're having your screening, if you've got bowel cancer in the family and you've had a screening done and it's all clear, you haven't got a problem with it. I think breast cancer now used to be a big deal 20 years ago, but now it's not because the majority of women recover from breast cancer now. So if you've been clear of breast cancer for a few years, then you can get cover.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
it's
that's
all
good.
it's all done
Yeah.
on an individual basis
Mm. See,
because we're
now,
all different, aren't we?
oh, absolutely. See, I personally wouldn't have a problem of just having the wife on the mortgage. So it's
Yeah,
just sign it over. That wouldn't bother me because God forbid we ever did split up anyway. She would be with the children. So she'd still have the
yeah.
house regardless. But at least if I'm not on there, then I don't have to worry about any of that.
Well, no. But saying that, life cover's not just for, and I'm not selling it by the way, because
Mm.
I'm not with the network anymore. So
I just don't think I'd want to pay the premiums.
well, the younger you are, the better. Because once you
44,
get
nearly
into your
45.
40s,
I'm
yeah,
in
once you get into
45.
your 40s, it goes up.
Yeah.
And the older you get, the more chance you are to get ill, and the higher your premium is going to be. And if you're a smoker and you're a drinker and you've got a few extra pounds on you, then it just goes up and up and up.
Exactly.
So
So what's the point?
well, if some people can afford it, some
Oh
people. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah. If you could afford it, then bravo. But if you're always pinching and chasing the next paycheck anyway, then
yeah, it is difficult. But if you've got your own business,
mm,
even if you're a sole trader, you can get your life cover or critical illness. You can get a business. You can do it on a business basis, and that way your payments are tax deductible. All
okay.
your premiums are tax if you do it through your business. I had a client who, I mean, he had a very good business. He has a very good business, should I say? And it was costing his business £400 a month. But he got diagnosed 18 months after he took out this policy. He got diagnosed with leukemia, and he had his £300,000 mortgage paid and 2 grand a month income protection until he recovered and went back to work, and a separate 175 grand life cover if he didn't survive. And touch wood, he's still here. So yeah, in them circumstances, he's bloody glad he did it
Mm,
because he had to have a couple of years off work, and he'd have lost his business.
yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
And even if you haven't got a mortgage, if you die and you're the main bread earner, then how's your family going to cope, without your income? So even, if you're young and you want 100 grand to protect your family in case you die suddenly or whatever, and then, it helps. And
Mm,
life cover is cheap. It is quite cheap compared to critical illness. So if you get it when you're, 25, 30, keep it. Get it over 30 years. and keep that. Don't ever cancel it, because you'll never get it that cheap again.
No, that's true. Yeah,
Yeah,
like grandpa rates.
yeah,
Is
yeah.
that what
So
they call it? Grandpa rates. But no, yeah, that's good advice. No, that's good advice. So going back to your book, then, where can people find your book?
well, to most people's disgust, it's on Amazon. And I done it on Amazon because it was the quickest and the cheapest way to do it, basically. There's 17.95, and I get £8.39 per book, and Amazon keeps the rest. But it's out there, and people can go online and they can have a little, because they have a little sample on there. They can have a little read. But a lot of people have emailed me and asked me if I could post them a copy, which, because lots of people don't want to support Amazon, which is entirely up to them. So yes, I'm more than happy to post it out to them. I'll charge like £3 postage. But you'd have to pay postage if it was with Amazon anyway. So
Yeah. And can I just say to the people watching this who don't like shopping with Amazon, and I get why you don't like it, but this is my point. At the same time that you're going, no, we're not going to use them, you're actually hurting so many small sellers like Josephine, because it's a quick way to do it. It's not necessarily the benefit for you
it's
to
not the
do it
most
that way.
profitable way to publish a book,
No,
but it's the quickest way to get it out there, and it is, worldwide.
absolutely. So I think people need to just bear that in mind before boycotting, because there's so many. Amazon is made up of so many small independent businesses and individuals and sole
Mm.
traders.
Because they have to go through there, because you can't compete with them. They're too big.
Mm.
So, you have
It's the
to,
same with eBay.
yeah, yeah. You have to bite the bullet, and if you want to sell your stuff,
Mm.
you have to put it on these platforms.
And it is a little bit strange how people seem to be more willing of eBay, but
Yeah.
but not Amazon. But technically speaking, they're exactly the same thing.
It's like they do the same. They do the same job, don't they?
Yeah, they're exactly the same thing. So I don't quite understand why one's okay and one's demonized. But there you go.
I think it's probably because Amazon doesn't pay tax. You know,
Right. Okay.
all, all the money they make, they don't have to pay tax, because I think they're offshore. They're not, based here. So that's one reason that people don't like them, because it's like, well, why shouldn't they pay tax? We have to pay tax. Well, that's
Yeah, they
another
should
story.
really,
Yeah.
because they've got warehouses all over Great Britain.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. No, I think there was a
they,
big deal about that. That actually got into the mainstream news. That they don't have to pay tax.
mm,
Bit unfair.
yes, it is rather.
But sometimes, like me, sometimes it's a bit of the devil, just to get it out there. Um, maybe I will start, putting my book in other places, but to start off with, just to get it out there, just to
Mm.
get people aware, then that was the quickest and cheapest way to do it.
No, absolutely. And hopefully, like I said, like we were discussing before we came on air, about maybe you could do it on Audible as well. So you've got an
Yeah,
Audible
yeah.
version. So
It's on Kindle, it's paperback, and it's hardback. But yeah, Audible, yeah, that's the next step.
yeah.
So everybody can benefit from it. And the reviews I've got on Amazon are really, really nice. And like this guy said, he said, actually get a hardback, because this is the sort of book you're gonna want to keep dipping into. If you've
Mm.
got a question, you go, oh, I'll have a look in that book and see if the answer's in there. So that's I think that's one of those books, like he said, will sit on your bookshelf for a long time, because it's
Yeah,
not going to go out of
it's
date.
just a great it's a great book to reference.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
no, absolutely. Well, listen, I hope it goes really well. I hope it's a bestseller, because
Well,
more and more people are waking up to what's going on, and more people each day are showing a huge interest. So
yes,
with that in
absolutely.
mind, you stand a good chance. I'll put that in the video description. I don't get affiliate links, just so people watching this know. Not that it would affect you anyway, but I don't. So if you want to buy the book, go and buy Josephine's book. It's well worth the money, and it's well
And I'm
worth
also
your knowledge.
going around the country giving talks on express irrevocable trusts. I need to get that right because people keep complaining. Is she on about discretionary or is she on about private? I'm on about private irrevocable trusts. There's lots of trusts, and I'm not going to live long enough to study all of those. So I've focused on, I believe, the most important, which is the one which will protect your property and your main assets. So I've concentrated on that predominantly. There is a bit in the book about other trusts, discretionary, bare trusts, and all the others. But I'm focused on the private irrevocable ones, for that reason, because people need to become aware that they could be liable, or their loved ones could be liable for a bit of a shock when they're no longer here.
Mm.
So I'm doing talks all around the country. So if anybody would like to book me, it doesn't have to be a massive venue. It can just be a church hall somewhere with, 12, 20, 25 people. It doesn't matter. I'm happy to come to you. I don't charge for my talks, but a bit of travel expense money would be good. But yeah, I've already had like 6 bookings in the last week to go around the country, and they're coming in. So that would be lovely. If somebody wanted to, just email me and I'll get straight back to you and we can arrange something. It's lovely meeting all these people, all these really lovely, awake, hospitable people. I must say, in the last 6 months, I haven't met a horrible person. I haven't spoken to a horrible person. They've all
That's
been
good.
really, really lovely people. I've had one email of complaint out of
Have you?
about 400 or 500 emails.
Oh, go on, do tell.
Well, it was a couple of Fridays ago, actually. He said he was appalled at my disregard for HMRC.
That
And
criminal organisation record.
yes,
That
yes,
that
because yes,
MHRD.
I have no respect for HMRC, apparently. And also, I didn't mention this, I didn't mention that in my talk. I left out this, I left out that. And I replied with a very pleasant email. And I just said, I was only on the show for 47 minutes. You cannot talk about trusts in their entirety in 47 minutes. And if I did have more time, people would have fell asleep by then because it's not the most exciting subjects. But I said, never fear. All the things that you've pointed out that I didn't mention are in my book. So please buy a copy.
See, always a sales
I
pitch.
don't know whether he did or not, but
But you're always going to get some fart heads, aren't you?
there's been a few solicitors, not very happy, but well,
Well,
and
they
that
wouldn't be,
article
would they?
No, and that article in the Daily Mail, I think it was last December, which was sent to me by Paul Lewis, who's he's on the radio. I think he's on Radio 4 every week. And
Oh,
he
there's
he
this
made
money saving expert bloke.
no, that's
Isn't that Paul Lewis?
that's another Lewis,
Oh,
isn't
that's
that?
Martin Lewis, isn't it?
That's it. Don't know if
Sorry.
they're related, but he put an article in the Daily Mail, and it said trusts don't work. Don't waste your time or your money. They're more trouble than they're worth. And I'm thinking, what? And I think, what are you saying? Are all these solicitors who are charging, you know, massive fees to write people's trusts out for them, are they committing fraud? Because trusts don't work. What a load of bullshit, excuse my French. They've been going for hundreds of years. And I
People like the
spoke to a lady,
Rothschilds rely on them.
yes, I spoke to a lady yesterday who was a compliance manager for the financial services. She's retired. She's retired from it now, but she was saying that she had a job where she had to check all these very, very wealthy. We're talking about billionaires. Had to check their trusts, and none of these trusts were registered. But they will tell you all trusts needs to be registered. Well, hang on, it's a bit of a conflict there because you get it from the horse's mouth that none of these trusts are registered, and then you go online and you ask that question, say, oh yes, you've got to register a trust. Well, you don't, especially a private irrevocable trust. It's private,
Well,
and that's the whole point.
just quickly, if you are able to break it down in simple terms, before we go, how easy is it for me to set up a private trust? What do I need to do? Like logical steps.
Well, people keep asking me for templates. You can't get a template for a trust because everybody's trust is individual. You know, everybody's got different assets. Everybody's got different beneficiaries. You know, everybody wants to do something different and want to leave it in a different way. You know, leave it until so-and-so's 25, or let him have half now and half in 20 years' time. You know, so there's no template. You can, you know, there's so many books out there that, I mean, I've read a couple of them and they're very boring. But there's a lot. You have to do the work. There's no easy way around it. You know, I mean, I had people come to me when I was doing mortgages saying, well, I can go online and get this rate, Joe. Well, I'd say, go on then. You know, if that was that easy, I would have a job. And they'd come back to me and said, I couldn't get that rate because they said I didn't earn enough. Well, yeah, I know. Because, you know, everybody is different. So I can help people. I can help people. And you don't have to be a licensed solicitor to do a trust. You can do your own trust, or somebody can do it for you. If you've had a go at doing your own and you want to email me that, I will check over it for you and I'll tell you if it's okay. You know, if you've missed anything out, or if it's written legally, would it be recognised legally? Instead of, you know, you could take a trust to a solicitor and get them to legalise it, and that'll probably cost you about 150 quid.
So
email me and I'll tell you straight off.
Are you happy then for me to put your email in the video description as well?
Yeah, I can give you my new website details for trusts, and I can also give you my mortgage email for anybody who's got any mortgage questions, which, you know, I don't charge to answer any mortgage questions.
Okay, that's really kind.
Well, I do. I mean, I do ask for a donation for the trust. But you know, it's way below what a solicitor would charge you. Let's put it that way. I mean, on average, it's £3,000 to trust for a solicitor, but it depends what you want to put in it. You know, I had one guy who contacted the solicitor, and he had a property, and he had two bits of land on separate titles, and he was quoted 15 grand, 5 grand per asset. You know, you can put more than one asset in one trust. You don't have to have separate trusts. And if you've got a mortgage on the property, you can put the equity in trust. But, you know, you have to be careful about that. And I've got all that in the book as well. In that book, there are some parts in that book where you have to read between the lines, because I have to be careful what I put in print. But, you know, the people who are awake to what's going on, they'll understand exactly what I'm talking about in there. Because it's not what, you know, it's how they phrase things to you. It's how the powers that be put things in. You know, they will say we may do this or we might do that. Well, that means it's not the law. You know, it's just scaremongering, really. You know, if it's the law, then there would be a massive penalty for breaking that law. And it's, you know, registering a trust is not the law. You know, you don't have to have a solicitor do it. You don't have a solicitor you can do your own will, which is much easier than a trust. But I mean, I offer a service to do people's trusts for them and their wills. I'm also helping people with their last and power of attorney, because I think that's very important, especially at the moment that they're trying to bring in the assisted dying bill. That's very scary, because that will give them all sorts of powers. So yes, last and power of attorney is a biggie. We should all have one, because we don't know what's around the corner. So, you know, email me. You know, if you want to talk anywhere around the country, email me and I can get back to you and we can set up a date. If you want information on mortgages, wills, trusts, just ping me an email and I'll definitely get back to you.
There you go. Perfect. Thank you very much. That's really kind of you, Josephine. And
well, it's been lovely coming on again. I really enjoyed, you know,
that's my pleasure.
Chatting to you.
Always a pleasure to have you on, and I hope everyone watching this has enjoyed it, learned from it, and please go out and support Josephine. Go buy a book, whether it's via a personal private link or whether it's on Amazon.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. And we'll have you back on again at another time just to have an update and perhaps
book number 2, perhaps. Who knows?
Who knows? Never say never.
No.
Look after yourselves, everyone. Take care, and I will speak to you all again soon. Bye for now.